Okay, you ready to go? All right, good evening. We'd like to get started. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to the Hartland Township Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, April 11th, 2019. We'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Keith, would you take roll, please?
Sure. Larry Fox,
Here.
Jeff Newsom, Joe Kalani. Here. Sue Grissom.
Here.
Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Tom Murphy.
Here.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We have several board members in, and I believe you've called a public meeting. So did you want to call your meeting to order?
Yes, I'll have clerk please call the roll. Supervisor Hartland. Here. Treasurer Boning. Trustee Chokyu. Here. Trustee Collier.
Here.
Trustee Germain. Trustee Harper. Here. Trustee Petruzzi. Here.
All right, thank you very much. We're on item 4 now, which is approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Grissom, second from Commissioner Kalani. Are there any changes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, approval of our February 28, 2019 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Support.
Motion from Commissioner Mitchell, second from Commissioner Voigt. Any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Call to the public. Anyone here this evening that wants to address the Planning Commission on any items? Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
We're great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the time tonight. My name is Chris Turner. I moved to the village about a year and a half ago. Just for the point of order in this particular matter, this is not my first stop. I wanted to talk about traffic control in the village, particularly on East Street. That's the street that goes in between Ore Creek Elementary and Village Elementary. Come 2:20 p.m. on school days, that becomes the neighborhood drag strip. And when I say drag strip, I mean speeds in excess of about 50 miles an hour on a regular basis. As I said, this is not the first stop. I've spoken with the sheriff's office about this. I've spoken with the school directly, as well with the school resource officer directly. And my next stop was with the board here, as a matter of if there's any way that we can have some sort of traffic control there. I understand that a stoplight isn't going to happen. I get that that part's not realistic, but I'm just trying to seek some sort of means by which, as you can see, I have my youngest son here today. I have 2 others at home. There are others on the street that are home and are homeschooled on a regular basis. I'm just trying to find a way that we can actually go about making that happen, whether it's through speed bumps, whether it's through some other way, just to make that stop. As I pointed out, before and after school hours are definitely the most busy, but that is a very common time and a common place that once people hit you can actually see, once people hit that stop sign, it's all go from there. And there's plenty of other places that you can even see evidence of this around that neighborhood, particularly on the street that leads into the post office in that area, where people literally just go through other people's go through other people's lawns just for the sake of not stopping at a stop sign. I don't know what I can do at this point, but I'm just trying to find some sort of guidance. If all else fails, where else can I go from here?
Okay. Troy, what would you suggest we do?
Well, from this information, I can reach out to the County Road Commission, the County Sheriff's Office. I can certainly have conversation with our township manager, and then I can try to reach back to you. And I got your name was Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'll try to either that, or if you can get in touch with me maybe Monday, I'll be happy to try to follow up and see what else we can do to help.
Okay.
One thing to make clear, the roads are county roads, so they're going
I
to be
understand.
the jurisdiction, but certainly we can use our influences here to help impact the situation.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking out. I've almost been hit on several times. The kids in the neighborhood have almost been hit several times. I've actually had to stop drivers. Typically, it's teenage drivers leaving school, typically, but not always. I've actually stopped people as I'm walking him in a stroller down the street. And it's to the point where I'm amazed that no one has been hurt yet. So I'm just trying to find the right way to go about doing this.
Okay, we understand.
Okay, thank you for your
Okay,
time.
thank you. Anyone else this evening?
Thanks.
All right, we'll close call to the public. We'll move on to item 7A, which is our retail market analysis. I think what we're going to do this evening is turn the floor over to Troy for an introduction, and then we'll turn the floor over and get an introduction there, and we'll have our actual presentation. So Troy?
Okay. Let me start off by showing a zoning map of Hartland Township. This is a zoning map. This would be US 23, kind of cutting the map in half, and then M59 going east and west in this direction here. What you see in the red would represent commercial zoned property, those properties in G, C. And then the white with cross-hatching, those are our planned developments. And planned developments can have commercial, they can have some residential, but the areas in this general area that are cross-hatched, white and with the crosshatch, those would be commercial. So this area, kind of at this major intersection, is what would commonly be referred to as the commercial core of Hartland Township. Planning Commission, Township Board is certainly no stranger to the newspaper articles and the trends in commercial and retail development. Numerous retail stores are closing, filing bankruptcy. We have not seen some of the commercial come in that maybe we thought we would see. And what we've also been approached by is requests by developers to take some of this commercial area and convert that to apartments or residential. And when they came in with those requests, they provided their argument that the commercial's not there. It's not, that land won't support that much commercial, but we think apartments would fit, or condos, or some sort of residential. And the Planning Commission decided that, well, before we head down that path, we should really examine whether or not retail could be supported in these areas. We should take a further look at what the future holds for commercial retail in our community. And fortunately, the Township Board was supportive of that and authorized the township to move ahead with a study. Mr. Gibbs was the company that was selected to do that, and he has performed a retail market analysis for our community. And this is one of many steps that the township will utilize as it goes into the future. We'll take this study and incorporate this into our future land use map and our comprehensive plan, and we'll have work to do after this to hopefully meet the demands of commercial and make whatever changes we have to make to make sure Hartland has success in the future. So with that, I'll let Mr. Gibbs make his presentation on the actual market analysis. I just wanted to give some background as to what led up to that and why we went ahead with doing this.
Very good. The floor is yours if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. My name is Robert Gibbs. I'm with Gibbs Planning Group, and we've been delighted to work with the township and the community on a 15 or 20-year market analysis to see if there's demand for any future retail in the community. This study really has three purposes. It will be a useful tool if you're an existing restaurant or retail owner in the community. You can use this study to seek out potential areas to expand your business, to get another point of view of whom your customers are, and if there's opportunities to grow your business. It's also useful for landlords and real estate developers whom may have a commercial property or may be considering building a commercial property. This is a tool that they can use to determine what types of retail would be realistic on their site and what types of businesses to go after. A large amount of our business is working with the private sector, with real estate developers and banks and institutions and universities to help them realize market potentials for various locations. And then lastly, it's a good policy tool for the community to help determine your zoning, your long-range zoning, and to get a sense for what the market will do over the next 15 or 20 years so that you can respond to that. Sometimes when we do these market studies, communities change their zoning to either encourage the retail or to discourage the retail, depending on the community point of view. We were asked to go and examine through 2035, which is a long time to look at the market. Hartland is, as you all know, a fairly rural location, but at the crossroads of M59 and 23, two very major regional intersections. We found that through 2035, that there is a market potential for about 160,000 square feet of new retail and restaurant space. That's in addition to those that are currently here or that in which site plans have been submitted. That's a fairly strong demand for the condition of the industry right now. As Troy said, the retail industry is going through a major crisis. Many stores are closing, and many stores that are growing now are only going to really AAA locations. So we thought this was a fairly strong demand through 2035. If developed as a conventional conventional retail center, that amount of square footage would occupy roughly 25 acres of land, to put that in perspective. If it were developed as a very compact, walkable, mixed-use development, it could be considerably less. If the site had a lot of constraints, a lot of unbuildable areas, then it could be more. But generally, that would respond to about 25 acres of real estate. This chart shows the current demand in 2018, 2025, and 2035. Today, there is a demand, we feel, a conservative demand for at least 117,000 square feet of new additional retail, and I'll go through those categories in a few minutes. By 2025, that'll grow to about 134,000 square feet of new retail demand, and then by 2035, about 160,000. That's a grand total of new supportable retail. If you were to translate those areas into land areas, today the township could absorb about 15 acres of new retail development. By 2025, about 20 acres, and about 25 acres by 2035. As a part of our study, we had the privilege of getting to know Hartland well. We really drove all the streets. We visited all the shopping centers, went to the grand opening of your new beautiful cinema, and just sort of became a semi-resident here. We also stepped back and looked regionally at all of the major shopping destinations in the entire southeast Michigan, all the way from Detroit out to out to Lansing and the Flint and Ann Arbor area. It's interesting because Hartland is in a fairly pronounced hole where it's surrounded by a lot of retail areas, but in itself, it does not have a lot of retail demand here, although there's some. We visited really every major shopping center, visited almost every store in this immediate area. And as a part of our evaluation, we have a little check sheet where we evaluate our interpretation of the goods and services that are being sold there to help determine if there's a void or a potential for expansion. Did a lot of research on the residents and the visitors and workers in Hartland and the surrounding area. We bought third-party data that told us about their demographics, the ages, the growth rates, the education, what sorts of jobs they have. But we also were able to get research about their types of businesses where they go shopping, how much spending occurs online, how much spending occurs for various categories like groceries and restaurants. And then we are also bought data on their lifestyles, kinds of activities they do, where they go on vacation. There's a lot of data out there right now, a lot of credit card data that we're able to buy. It doesn't go, of course, to the individual. It's down to the census block, but it gives us a lot of insight into the lifestyles and spending potential of people that live and work here. Currently, the Hartland residents spend about $360 million a year on restaurants and retail goods and services. About 142 million of that is spent just on retail, and about 60% of that spending is occurring outside of Hartland. So only the community is only capturing about 40% of what its residents and workers and visitors are actually spending. About 60 cents of every dollar is leaving Hartland to be spent elsewhere. We got out the stopwatches and did drive time analyses of how far you could go from here in 30 minutes, and it's surprisingly you can go a long ways from Hartland in 30 minutes when you're not stuck in rush hour traffic. It's an easy 30-minute drive down to Ann Arbor and up to Flint and almost all the way to East Lansing, to Novi, Livonia, and to large areas. And these pink circles represent major shopping destinations. So if you live or work in Hartland, you're really a very short drive to a large amount of shopping opportunities. And the green line represents the drive for a 15-minute drive, and it's as easily as you all know, it's really without rush hour traffic. It's only a 15-minute drive to Brighton, Howell, Fenton, and large parts of Waterford. This is an enlargement of that map. So the people living and working in Hartland have many, many other places where they can go for dining and shopping. And that works two ways. We conducted a number of focus groups from people who live in Hartland, but also around and outside of Hartland. And a lot of people that live in or work in Howell or Brighton or Fenton told us that they come here. Some of your retailers they prefer over their more closer retailers, and they like your restaurants and your cinema. So it works two ways. You're a short drive to many other shopping areas, but a lot of other markets are a short drive to Hartland. The blue line represents a 10-minute drive, and it's a little more than a 10-minute drive to Howell, but a 10-minute drive to Brighton and to parts of Waterford. We, based on the demographic profiles that we ran and our analysis of the existing competitive shopping areas and neighborhoods, we developed a gravitational model to estimate what we call the primary and secondary trade area. The red line represents our estimation of the primary trade area, and that represents where we think about 50 to 60% of the regular shoppers live that shop in Hartland. So sure, people from outside of that area do come here and vice versa, but roughly 50 to 60% of the people that are shopping here we think live within that area, and that's about a 5-minute radius, could be about a 5-minute radius. In that primary trade area, there are about 36,000 people with a very high average household income of $108,000. That is more than double the national average for the average household income, and it's a very, very robust income and a lot of people. So even though it is a rural area, there are a lot of people with fairly high incomes that have an easy 5 to 8 minute drive to Hartland. We purchase data that break people living inside the primary trade area down into different, what they call lifestyle classifications. And this database estimates that about 60% of the people living in the primary trade area are whom they classify as green acres. Green acres people like the outdoors, they like sports, they like do-it-yourself projects, they have tools, they do a lot of repairs themselves, and they like a rural but a very active lifestyle. And that 60% has a median household income of about $77,000 per year and an average household income of almost $100,000 per year. A lot of these families are two-income families, so combined they have a lot of access to money. About 21% are classified as soccer moms. That, of course, they should call soccer moms and soccer dads, but they call them soccer moms. And they also have a very high median household income of about $90,000 per year. They are very active and they're very dedicated to the education for their families. They have young families and sports, and they do a lot of entertaining with their families. And then about 10% are classified as savvy suburbanites. Those are older, mostly empty nesters, and they also have high incomes, and they are really into dining out and entertaining. The Hartland spending, total retail and restaurant spending last year in 2018 was about $360 million, and only about $142 million of that actually occurred in Hartland. So about 60% of that spending of the people who live here is occurring elsewhere, and that also includes online shopping. And the Hartland residents averaged about 9% of their spending is occurring online, and that's in line with the national average. Of that $142 million that's being spent here, or the 60% that's leaking out, we conservatively think that Hartland's businesses could capture $35 million of additional sales. And that's a fairly conservative number. It could be higher, but for purposes of our study, we felt comfortable with that number. The secondary trade area is shown in blue, and the secondary trade area is where we estimate about 80% of the regular customers to the restaurants and businesses come from. Now, we did meet a lot of restaurant owners here that said they have people that drive an hour and a half to come here, which isn't unusual for the quality of some of the restaurants and retailers here. But on average, we think about 80% of the people come from the secondary trade area, and that includes a lot of residents from Howell, Brighton, Fenton, and the Waterford and Milford area. This was a really kind of a pleasant surprise. A lot of people that lived in those other communities said they prefer shopping in Hartland. They like the quality of your stores, even though it's the same brand. They prefer the brand in Hartland. They said people are a little friendlier, parking is a little easier, and they just feel more comfortable driving past that other store to come here to shop. In the secondary trade area, there are over 150,000 people with a very high average household income of over $100,000. So these are extremely strong demographics. A lot of people, 100,000 people, very high incomes, and people enjoy coming here for shopping. Of course, you have the new Imagine Theater, which is one of the best cinemas we've seen anywhere in the country. We were able to go to the grand opening, and that will change the demographics, and that shifted your trade area. And we dial up the demand based on the Imagine Theater. The Imagine Theater will generate a lot of demand for your existing restaurants, and a lot of restaurants told us they've seen an increase in sales. but it also will create a demand for other restaurants, and it'll have a ripple effect for your other businesses. And there are a number of businesses that'll want to move to Hartland because of the Imagine Theater. This isn't very readable, but there's a chart in our study that describes in detail the demographic profiles for the primary, secondary, and then for the county and for the state of Michigan. And this, again, shows the competitive shopping areas and really how Hartland is really in the middle of a sort of a donut. In this year, we found a demand again for about 117,000 square feet of new retail and restaurant space combined. That's unusually high in this market. And in a lot of places where we've done market studies lately, we've had to report back that there is no demand or maybe an oversupply and maybe even a negative demand. So it's a pretty robust demand in this economy. That 117,000 square feet, if it were built conventionally with surface parking and with the average site would take about 15 acres of land. It could be higher, it could be less, but on average about 15 acres of land. And in that demand, there's about a demand for about 12,000 square feet of new clothing, shoe, jewelry stores. And that translates to about 6 to 10 new stores could be built that sell jewelry, apparel, shoes, etc. There's a demand for about 20,000 square feet of general merchandise and specialty gift stores. That would be stores that sell cosmetics or home appliances, homewares, the kinds of goods and services you would buy in a department store. There's a demand for a full-service hardware here, and that surprised us. But because there are hardware goods available here, but there's a strong demand for that. And I think that's in part to the large amount of people that like to do their own repairs, that are do-it-yourself type of households. There's a demand for several new home stores that sell home furnishings or home accessories, frame pictures and art. And that would equate to about 6 to 10 new home stores are supportable here. We did not find a demand for a grocery store, and that really surprised me, and I guess that's a testament to the quality of the grocers that you have here now. But we could not find a demand for additional groceries. Now, that doesn't mean that one couldn't open here. There could be a grocer, especially a green grocer, that can find a niche that they might be able to meet. But there's a demand for a pharmacy, and that surprised us too. But the average pharmacy is about 12,000 square feet, so this would be an average large modern pharmacy. This demand for the pharmacy and all of these goods could also be made up with existing businesses. So if you had an existing clothing store, you could expand your operations, expand your marketing, and you could pick up that additional demand inside the walls of your store. So all of this demand could, in theory, be met with existing retailers by expanding their operations and increasing their sales. A strong demand for sporting goods, about 5,000 square feet. That would be a good-sized sporting goods store. And a demand for about, the total demand for 2018 is about $35 million. And this is a breakdown of the demand in 2018, about 91,000 square feet for just retail. That's pulling out the restaurants. About 104,000 square feet by 2025, and about by 123,000 by 2035. This is a chart that goes in great detail by category of how many square feet are supportable, what the sales would be if that store opened or expanded, the sales per year, and the sales per square foot. And there are 3 columns today, 2025, and 2035. This will be a very valuable tool if you're an existing business, because it will illustrate where there is a market demand for you to expand your store or your restaurant in certain categories. Or if you're a landlord, this could help you target possible new tenants or users to your property, and then, of course, for the community as a policy. So this is the exact type of chart that we develop for real estate developers, for institutions, and for retailers and grocery stores and restaurants that are looking to expand. So it's a very serious study, and one that I think many people in the community will find useful. There is a demand today for an additional 25,000 square feet restaurants. That actually did surprise me. We were able to research all of your restaurants, and we can attest that they're all very good. They all have good service and good food. But in spite of that, there's still a demand for many more restaurants. And this could be new businesses opening, or it could be existing restaurants expanding their service and operations and capturing that sales. That would translate to about 8 to 12 new restaurants that could open today, given the market demand. And that also would equate to 1 new brew pub, 4 full-service restaurants, and 5 quick casual kind of restaurants, what they call limited service type restaurants. This is a detailed chart that breaks down the types of restaurants that are supportable, by size and by sales. For example, the top line says that a bar or a brew pub could open at about 2,100 square feet. It would generate about $330 a square foot per year. I can't read the number, but it looks like it's about $400,000 a year in sales. Landlords like these numbers because rents are based on sales. Rents are about 6 to 8% of sales. So if you are planning a new development, this will give you a guide as to how much possibly you could charge for rent. And then the chart below breaks it down. 25,000 square feet today, 30,000 square feet of new restaurants by 2025, and 36,000 square feet by 2035. And is that a duplicate? Yeah, that's a duplicate, sorry. This is a chart just summarizing what we found is supportable, about 20,000 square feet of general merchandise. This would be in 2018. 25,000 square feet of additional restaurants, 13,000 pharmacy, 5,000 square feet of sporting goods stores, no demand for additional grocery right now, 12,000 square feet of clothing and apparel and jewelry, 11,000 square feet of home goods, and 12,000 square feet for a new hardware store, for a total of about 117,000 square feet. Now, this is what the market would support. We are not saying the township should build this or zone for this. We're just saying the market, there is a market to support this, and by supportable we mean that if the business opened, it would earn a market rate of return. It would have sales high enough to pay normal cost and to give a normal rate of return on that type of business. It's possible that a new business could come into this market that could overachieve the market. And it's completely plausible that, for example, more restaurants or a green grocer could come in that would find a niche and that could overachieve the market. But under normal conditions, this is about what's supportable, we think, today. If those businesses opened, they would have average sales of about $300 per square foot per year. That's how sales are measured in retail, and that's a high number. The average sales per square foot in the United States is $220 a square foot. So there is a demand for, if you were to open a store here, where you could have sales of about 25, almost 30% higher than the national average. And we found that all across the board for every category and for restaurants. So there is a potential here to do very well. By 2035, again, we found a demand for about 160,000 square feet of new retail. That would generate about $45 million in additional sales. That's in addition to what's being sold today. And that would translate to about 25 acres in size. It could be a lot less if it's a compact walkable new urban community, or it could be more if you had a site with a lot of constraints. And this is a breakdown of the sizes, again, today, 2025, and 2035. And then this overlays the amount of land that would be required to accommodate those, everywhere from 15 acres today to about 25 acres by 3035. We found about 60% of the spending that is currently occurring here is leaking outside of the community. Only about 8 or 9% is that on the internet. And I thought I would just discuss a little bit about what's happening in the industry. The industry, as everybody knows, is under a lot of duress right now. About 25% of all shopping malls are going to close by 2022, according to Credit Suisse. And that's in part because many families have cut back on their shopping. Because of higher expenses and because stagnant wages, a lot of families have just cut back. And seniors are on a lot of fixed income. There are a lot of seniors in this area, and seniors, of course, are cutting back for their retirement. And the new generation, the millennials, the largest generation in American history, are cheap. They don't do a lot of shopping. And instead, millennials like to have experiences. They like to go skiing, and they like to go canoeing and paddleboarding, and they just don't like to shop a lot. They like experiences. They like to go to exciting places. When they do shop, they spend a lot of their time online. And all the groups are pushing back against conventional strip centers. Almost every demographic group right now prefers to shop in walkable urban places where they can hang out, where they can walk from restaurants to shops to other places like this. And that's in part why you're seeing a resurgence in a lot of historic towns. And a lot that, I think, there's a future for that in the old historic village here. Everybody likes art, and a lot of retailers and cities are putting in art right now to attract more shoppers. And then a lot of the new towns that are being built now a lot of the new shopping centers are being built to look old. This is Easton, this is in Columbus, Ohio. We're working with them right now on an expansion, but this was built about 20 years ago to look like a town, and it has streets and on-street parking and sidewalks, and if you squint just right, it does look like a real town. But it's really a 2 million square foot shopping center that's disguised to look like a town. A lot of people are still building conventional shopping centers where you have a row of shops in a straight line, and then you have large parking outside. And I would like to caution you that if I know you are considering rezoning some of your property, that you should probably have more than just 25 acres because not every site may be developable, and a lot of communities that go through this process may want to have 2 or 3 times what the market will support in reserve. This is what we're seeing a lot of communities do, is they're putting retail on the first level of the multifamily. These are apartments in Charlotte. It's called Birkdale Village. And these apartments have retail on the ground level, and then they're either condominiums or apartments upstairs. The multifamily developers love this because it's easier to rent out the apartments or to sell the condominiums when you can go downstairs and walk to a coffee shop or to a restaurant. And this is something that you may want to consider in the township, is if you don't already allow this to occur, and even encourage people that are building residential to have some amount of commercial. There's, of course, a big push for smaller lot walkable communities like this. This is one in Beverly Hills, Michigan, that we planned a while ago. And a lot of the new home builders are putting in small amounts of retail instead of clubhouses. The new clubhouse right now is a coffee shop. And so this is one in Nashville, in Franklin, Tennessee, outside of Nashville. And it has a little group of restaurants and coffee shops, but it's really a residential subdivision. And this is a nice way of shoehorning in a very carefully nice amount of retail. And then there's a lot of these being built right now. These are bungalow courts. These are very compact, little walkable residential areas where everybody shares a common front yard. And this is one we're working on in Charleston, South Carolina, where the developer put in a corner store, a bakery, and a coffee shop instead of clubhouse. And so there are lots of ways of cleverly putting in and mixing residential with retail, and I would encourage you to allow that to happen, or to encourage that to happen. It really makes for a more walkable location. So in summary, we found that your trade areas go beyond Brighton, Howell, Fenton, and to a little bit of Waterford. About 60% of the market share is leaking out of the community right now. That's a little higher than average. And we feel there's a demand, there's a realistic potential to capture around 35 more million in additional sales. And by 2035, there's conservatively a demand for about 160,000 square feet of additional retail, equating to about 25 acres of land, more or less. And today, there's a demand for about 117,000 square feet of retail. That would occupy 35 acres by 2035 and 160,000 square feet by then. So thank you very much. It's been great working with you, and be happy to take questions and continue to assist you with this process. Thank you.
Okay, great. What I'd like to do is, Planning Commission, if you have any questions for Mr. Gibbs, Township Board, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll start out with the first one. When you say there's room or need for an additional 117,000 square feet, how are you taking into account developments that we've already approved that have square footage? For example, the Ramco project next door with the Meyer, they have other buildings. They have another 200,000 square feet approved for that site. Is that 117 going into already approved square footages, or is 117,000 on top of the already approved 200,000?
The latter. The 117,000 is in addition to commercial developments that have been approved,
But not built?
but not built.
So the Ramco project is approximately 600,000 square feet in total. It's not built. We have 200,000 in a Meyer and 50,000 in a theater and a couple scattered sites. So you're saying that the 600, if, and I just want to talk that development, we have many developments, but let's just talk that one. We have 600,000 square feet approved in that project. If that was the only commercial project we had in this township, your study is saying in 2018, that 600,000 could be built out, and there would still be a need for an extra 117,000?
Yes. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. We put a weight, we assumed that new retail would have an industry average in sales. So if they built retailers that overperformed, then that would cut into that. If they built retailers that underperformed, then that would add on to that. But yes, we're assuming that that's in addition to what's
So you took,
approved.
your numbers are all, your projections of 2018, 25, and 2035 are in addition to already approved site plans for commercial development in Hartland?
Yes, that's right,
Okay.
as we understand them.
Just having been a resident here a long time, that seems like a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. Yeah, but it's a very large market.
Okay.
Have to add another lane to M59? Or two?
Yeah. Any questions?
Just had one quick comment, maybe a reassurance. But in the report, you mentioned that these numbers that you used, the growth curve that you used for population, was all based on historical data. So you didn't anticipate any other large growth or anything. It's just based on the history of our growth curve that we've had in Livingston County and Hartland Township, correct?
No, if I said that, I misspoke. It's based on projected growth through 2035.
But what projected from what? What data did you use to project? What? But
We-
how did you build the curve or the estimate?
We bought 3 databases that projected the growth. One, of course, is the U.S. Census, which is projecting growth in Livingston County in this area. And then we bought data from 2 other private groups that estimate the population and job growth.
I've got a question. I'm just kind of curious, when I see a number like 160,000 square feet, and then you based it off of census data and other projections, how much did those focus groups add to that? I'm curious the value of the focus groups and,
The focus groups were really helpful because it added to the demand. I was very surprised at the number of people from the focus groups and other groups that we conducted that come here from other communities. The surrounding communities like to shop here. So the focus groups that we did really increased the amount that we thought you could capture and increased the demand.
so in those focus groups, and they said they like to come to Hartland, is there specific things that we're doing that appealed to them? Is there something that we can kind of grab onto and continue, make sure we continue to do?
Yeah, that's a great question, yes. Hartland, we were told by a lot of people that they feel more comfortable here, they feel safe here, not that they feel unsafe elsewhere, but also that it's more beautiful, that your buildings are more beautiful, that the landscaping is nicer, the buildings are, they said they're built to a higher, they look better, they look prettier, and they felt like there's a higher standard here. So even though it's the same, it may be the same store X that's in Brighton or Fenton, they felt that it was a better store. And even though it's probably selling the same product, they felt like they're getting higher quality and better service here. So there is a feeling, and I think that's in part because you do have high building standards. Your buildings are built out of nice materials, the signage is a little more restrained, a little nicer. And people told us they feel like they're getting better quality and service, and they just feel more comfortable here shopping. So yeah, I would encourage you to do that.
One thing I just maybe talked to the commission about was I'm kind of a visual person, so the 160,000 square feet was hard for me to capture kind of how big that area would be. Well, he mentioned in the report that it was, Silver Point is 160,000. So if you look at how Silver Point is spread across all down the road there in Fenton, kind of goes along with what he said, have more than 25 maybe available, 25 acres available, because the way they want to build might be different.
And by big box or big store standards, if my memory is right, I think Meyer is around 190. Your Rural King is about the same. I don't recall what Target is. So that's what you're equating it to if you chopped it up and take a look
Correct.
at it.
It's not only chopped up, but it's spread out.
Right, right.
So there's two ways to look at that number. We probably don't want one big 160,000 square foot building, but maybe we do. But the other option would be if they spread it out across 25 to 35 acres.
Right. I want to go back to the residential part, because the growth that you used, and just make sure I'm understanding it. Because I read in the report here, it says primary trade area has an estimated 2018 population of 36,300, which will increase at an annual rate of 0.84% to 37.9 by 2023. So that's data you've collected. The source of this data, is it looking at projects that we have in the pipeline? Or is this how do they make that projection? We have some large residential projects that are in the pipeline. If they come to reality, if they actually get built and they take 10 years to build, I understand we might be talking numbers like that, but how do they get that number?
I don't really think I don't put a lot of weight into what we buy, the data we buy, so we add to it. Because the population growth is based on a formula the U.S. Census uses, and then 2 other database companies use a similar formula, and it's all based on job growth. And we felt that was, we had to use the number because that's the only number we had, but we thought it was very, very conservative. For example, we met a lot of empty nesters that are moving here from Ann Arbor, from Royal Oak, Birmingham. A lot of people are moving here because they get a nice home and live in a nice community, and that doesn't show up under those growth. And I know there's a lot of new residential communities. So we published the numbers. Those are the numbers we used, but we built our model assuming those were very conservative. And it's not just Hartland, but it's Fenton is growing, and Grand Blanc, and Howell, and Brighton. We're working in Brighton right now. So there's a lot of growth, of course, coming here. So we weighed those numbers very conservatively. I think you're going to see much more growth than what's published.
We have this constant battle here. I'm sure it's no different with any other community that has similar characteristics to us. Expectations are that all this commercial should be built out already. What's taken you so long? It's been 10 years since that development was approved. But in all the meetings we have with individuals looking to bring businesses here, we're always talking about the rooftops. They're looking for those rooftops, and so much of this to me, is driven on population. So I try to grab a handle on the population component, because everybody we speak to tells us if you want the growth, if you want that built out, you better get the people here.
And the site selection criteria that retailers use today is much stricter than it was before the recession. So even though we found there's a demand for this amount of retail, it may not happen because the retailers are dialing up their criteria. So there's lots of areas where there's a very high demand where no one will go to because the stores have decided not to open at all, or they've tripled the amount of rooftops they want. That could happen here too. It could be that even though you have a demand, that a lot of the retailers just don't want to open unless they're in a really, really under-retailed area.
And
That's completely plausible, and it's going that direction very quickly.
Well, and I believe that's why you see these power retail centers like Novi still exploding with growth, because what they're doing is they're gobbling up the smaller markets that are that 15, 20, 30-minute drive.
Yes.
And when you're the new guy trying to grow and create something, you, in some respects, are fighting that. And I agree with most everything that was up there, but I think you still fight some of that, because the people here may want it. They may have the money. We have very high, household income with the median income. All those things are really good, but you still got to convince that retailer in New York or California and the bank behind them that that's the right thing to do when there are 3 other stores of that nature within a 30-mile drive in any direction.
That's right. It was common for some retailers to open a store a day before the recession, 350 stores a year. And a lot of those have cut back to 1 a month. They've cut back 2, 3, 5% of what they were doing before. So our job is to tell you what the market demand is, and it's parts art, parts science. But it's totally plausible that because of the severe changes in the industry, that they just may not come here for a long time. And Or it's possible someone will come along and say, look, we want to build 500,000 square feet. We've got a whole new concept no one's thought of before, and we like where these two highways cross, and we think we're going to pull people from other directions. It's totally plausible.
And there's a lot of money people here spend.
And the studies we do today, we've been doing this for 30 years, the studies we do today are much more conservative than they would have been 10 years ago.
Anybody, board members, any questions? Any other planning commissioner questions?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Was there any area in your categories that you saw part of the group either close to being saturated or on the verge of oversupply?
Just groceries. The groceries were, we couldn't find a demand. That's highly unusual, but we could not find a demand for that. There are some very good grocery stores here now, as you know, in the market.
I have a question.
Just Jean.
So this study, which is really on the whole extraordinarily positive for Hartland, how influential of a tool is it for attracting new development? I mean, we hold up this study and say, look at these stats, you really want to come here. Does it work that way?
Yes, actually, our studies, or not just us, but other studies like this, when they become public, can induce a lot of interest, a lot of demand. We've had this happen all over. So it's plausible. Some communities that we show these studies to change their zoning to remove all commercial zoning because they don't want the growth to come there, and others say, well, we want more. So it's a tool, but this is a very real, serious tool that you've engaged us to do. And we appreciate it, yeah.
You know, you mentioned that you've worked on several projects. You mentioned Brighton and some other ones, and I think you said Ohio. So, did you undertake such an analysis for the client for that purpose that led to some of that development, or can you give? I guess where I'm going is some of your projections, how some of your projections, how successful some of your projections have demonstrated in reality.
Our projections are usually very close. I mean, it's not. We just did one for Dowagiac, Michigan, a small town in the southwest corner, and the city manager just called and said, "My son opened a bakery based on your study, and your projections were within 1% of his sales. How'd you do that?" Now, that's a lot of luck to be within 1%, but usually we're within 10%. And we do have we have had a lot of developers build based on our studies, and we have a whole database where they report back the sales, and we're usually pretty close.
Because I was looking at when you listed various industries, where you, like, for example, music, there was one like a music store or something like that, and you kind of identified how many square foot. That's something that could be also used. I mean, that gets pretty specific with certain types of commercial enterprises. And is that that's what you're referring to, correct?
Yes, we looked at 52 categories, and the ones that we reported are the ones that are supportable. But again, I don't want to oversell our study. It's based on what the market demand is, and we're assuming that you could capture somewhere between 4 and 9% of that leakage. But it's plausible somebody could build a beautiful store and just not be good at retailing and not do very well at all, or somebody could overperform. We don't have a real crystal ball, but it's based on what the market will bear. And it's just a great location, great demographics. I mean, you double the national average in sales, incomes. Very, very strong demographics with a lot of growth, and and really high standards. One of the criteria a lot of retailers have now is they only want to go to communities that have high standards. And some retailers will come to your planning commission, I don't know about you, but they'll go to planning commissions and see how strict they are, and they won't go to ones that are too lenient, because they're going to put a lot of money in their store, and they want the other stores around them to be of high quality. So, glad to see that here.
Just for the benefit of reminder, the Planning Commission and the board who didn't, I think we did the interviewing for this. Troy, you had found us several possible organizations to work with, and we narrowed that list down and did a couple interviews here. And so I'm going to speak to the quality of the Gibbs Planning Group, and that we selected them through a process for the benefit of everybody actually in the room or at home, that we felt that we could do very well with any of the applicants that we had interviewed, but we had chosen this one for particular reasons. And I would hope that we would use this to help us further our goals in the township, and think that there's a lot of credibility behind it, because I believe all of the organizations we interviewed carry weight with anything that has a report that has their name on it.
Thank you. And then I probably just need to repeat this again. All of this demand could be absorbed through existing businesses by increasing their sales, expanding their product lines or hours or something like that too. So,
Well, I think this is something to share with the chamber, honestly. I think that this is something we can encourage our local businesses to do. I support and promote shopping locally, and I think if you can offer the people here more and campaign that, I think they can all be successful.
I think it should also be shared with the schools, because I think what the demand could be in the opportunity, if this is all about bringing enterprise here, we want homegrown people to grow businesses here too.
Right?
And, that young person who has an idea that wants to, start an enterprise that maybe he never thought of, or she never thought of starting that here in Hartland. So I think this is something that, I know we've got a meeting, I think soon with a joint meeting with the Board of Education. I think that's something that we could probably share with them, that too. So.
Oh, yep.
I have a question.
All right.
So currently you say we've got need for 117,000 square foot more space to fulfill our demand. And we've got 600,000 square foot of space that's already been pre-approved for development. That brings our deficit to 717,000 square feet. Now, as an investor, that's like shooting fish in a barrel. If we have a deficit so big that it's getting close to 750,000 square foot, what is keeping investors from coming to Hartland? Is it our high standards versus our strategy? Maybe we're not marketing these businesses correctly. On M59 and US 23, it is a big X on the map. If the visibility of these businesses is far off the road instead of up to the road, are they not creating enough excitement that we can encourage these businesses to invest here? Recently, Ron Wilson Marine, just opened a huge 250,000 square foot facility in Wixom. He looked at Hartland, he's a friend of mine, he said he wouldn't come here because of our restrictive ordinances and our outside storage. He said that would be too much. And he also said he wouldn't come here because the procedure to become approved is very long in Hartland, whereas Wixom is approving businesses in 30 days or less. Could we up our game a little bit and maybe get some more businesses?
I don't know that this is his area of expertise. And so you're going to ask somebody a question in regards to something he doesn't know that part about, so we generally don't open the application or an actual agenda item up to the public. I was just trying to do that, but I'm not going to allow it
I didn't
to
have
get off topic.
Embarrass anybody. I'm
No.
asking, you know, he's the marketing guy. Is there something we could change to make this more attractive so that we could fill the 717,000 square foot deficit that you claim we have?
Well, we could talk about it after.
Yeah, I
Why don't we
think
do that? But our experience is your high standards and just the beautiful location is more desirable by the retailers today because they're competing with the internet, and their shoppers today are looking for an experiential activity, something they just can't get online. They're just not looking for a commodity. They actually want a nice experience. So, but I'd be happy to talk about that more.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to say, I thought it was a very thorough report and very professional. And I did appreciate the fact that he went to his survey group. I'm not sure the other organizations talked about a survey group, but I thought that was helpful, probably not only for your report, but the information you put in your report for us to read too.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm going to try to do this, okay? We generally don't open agenda items up to the public. If we're going to ask,
We have called it.
we've got call, actually, we do. We have call to the public coming up here next. So
And
why don't we
I'll stay-
close this?
And Mr. Chairman, I'll just stay around, and I'd be happy to answer questions after the meeting, too.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All righty, seeing none, we are up to call to the public. If anybody has any questions, you can come forward, give your name, and ask your question. Recall, we don't respond during call to the public, but we'll certainly take your information.
Relates to the study, and it's really more to Mr. Gibbs. I'm Frank Kraus, one of the owners of one of the shopping centers. One curious item was, you mentioned specifically that Hartland had 2 shopping centers. And you mentioned where the Kroger Center, and you mentioned where the Walmart was as being the 2 shopping centers. And it was curious as to why, and maybe it's just because they don't have the retail, why the Ramco isn't listed as a shopping center. They obviously planned it as a shopping center. They still have the majority of the to-be-built
Right.
there, and they've been trying for 10 years to make it happen, and it hasn't happened. Why that one isn't, and why Fountain Square wasn't included as a, quote, full shopping center. And the other question is, and again, it's for you, is you make a point twice in your report of the need for very good visibility and an equivalent statement in terms of signage, and those are 2 kind of debatable areas in Hartland Township as to whether anybody has very good visibility and signage. So what your comment would be, does that contribute to why why you can have a Ramco that's been trying for 10 years to make it happen and has got, what I guess it's a 500,000 square foot shortfall. So I just leave it
Okay,
at that.
thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions? If you want to come up, give your name.
You know who I am.
Well, not everybody in the room does, and how about all of our worldwide viewers?
That's fine. Hello, world. I'm Doug Kuhn. Spent a number of years on the Planning Commission here in Hartland, Zoning Board of Appeals. I was on Township Board. It's kind of interesting. It's a little deja vu listening to this presentation. Very good presentation. I congratulate you. But for 45 years, Hartland has known it has been the hole in the donut. It's nothing new. One of the presentations that you brought up, which I particularly appreciated and have, how do I want to say it, tried to sell for many, many years, is a a usage plan that has mixed use and with residential and some commercial. Oddly enough, one of the best executed versions of that plan is something like 400 years old. It's one of the first developments in the state, in the country. It's called Williamsburg, Virginia. And I think you're familiar with it.
Yes.
I doubt if any of you board members have ever been there.
3 times.
You have? So you've seen what those people did with their limited resources, and today, it's what we would call modern, with a community layout. So if you're talking about Hartland being unique, where else are they doing that? That's something that I would recommend looking at, is doing some of those kind of developments. See how they go. But that would include shops at the ground level, housing residences above. I think there's a great need for that. The world's changing drastically. On the way in tonight, listening to the news, Christine Lagarde from the World Monetary Fund is predicting a huge decrease worldwide in spending and growth. So that's the future we're probably going to be looking at. Tread carefully, go forward carefully on some of this. Also look at industrial development. That's an area that brings jobs, high-paying jobs to the community, which will help all of the other businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on forward.
Hi, my name is Julia Upfall. I'm from Ann Arbor Spark. We're the local economic development service providers here in Livingston County. And I just wanted to offer our assistance in connecting the retail market study with local brokers and kind of the commercial real estate market. Retail isn't typically our area of focus. We're more focused on that industrial development. However, we see this as kind of the third leg in the stool here in Livingston County. We have retail, we have healthcare, and we have the industrial manufacturing. And we want to continue to support it in any way we can. So with that, if there's anything we can do to provide assistance in making sure that this gets into the right hands, we're happy to do so.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close call to the public. Up item 9, planners report. Troy, did you have anything for us?
I did. I had sent an email to you. We discussed at one of our prior meetings some new legislation that has passed regarding the upcoming 5G small cell wireless antenna. The legislation on that has limited local municipalities' ability to regulate it. I was given a draft ordinance from the Michigan Municipal League, and I included that to you. And this is not a topic on our list of ordinance amendments, and I was just curious where the Planning Commission felt on this particular topic, if that's something that you wanted to have that examined, and I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
I did have an opportunity to read it. I think we should put it on the list, and it would be nice to be proactive. Okay.
And again, just to let everybody know what the new 5G small cell, the prior technology involved installing a tower, and at the top end of the tower you might have a couple different sets of antenna up there. This new technology, these antenna can be affixed on the side of a building, on a utility pole, a lot of different places these antenna can go now. They don't have to be as high. So just to kind of give you a precursor of what this is about. So
yeah, I would support at least taking a look at it, bring what you find back to us.
okay. That's all I've got.
That's all you've got? Okay, committee reports. Any comments? Bill, did you need to close your meeting?
Yeah, I'll make entertain a motion to close the board meeting. Petrucci and Harper, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
All right, great. And we are up to adjournment.
Move to adjourn the meeting?